This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides, so head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow Cook Eat Arrange, the podcast of me and a frequent guest, Josie Lewis, who's a head gardener at Perch Hill. Welcome, Josie.
Morning. Hello.
It's a pretty dry morning, I would say. Good Scottish word.
Very, yes. Yeah.
But we're going to do a couple of episodes, one this month and one next month. So one for March and one for April, on really the sort of behind the scenes goings on of propagating, really, mainly for the cutting garden with my new book out this spring, but not only. And so we thought Josie would be the best person to lead on that. Rebecca Cocker, who's actually our propagator, is not here today, but Josie and her work very closely together, and I work very closely with both of them. So we're going to just give you any sort of tips and tricks of the things that we're sowing now, how to do it to succeed, and just chat away. And then again, we're going to do the same in April about moving them on, so what we do at the next stage, how we prick things out, a sort of bit on plant physiology a little bit, what we're sowing later, so sort of mid-April onwards, that kind of thing. So, Josie, do you want to kick off? Should we start with our list, and as we go through, just give the tips that we think are particularly relevant to these are kind of 12 favourite plants for sowing in March?
Yes, yeah. So I'll start with one of my very favourites and a stalwart here. Would never be without it, which is Serinthy major. Such a good plant. All through the winter, we've had little plants sitting on top of our containers of bulbs. We use it as pot toppers. So that'll flower away when the tulips start to flower in April, May time.
Yeah.
It's a really nice background for that. But that isn't talking about seed sowing, so I'll get back onto the point. So Serinthy's got nice big seeds, so you can place them on your seed tray. So the compost we use is our own blend. Well, the one that we sell as well, so it's accessible to everybody. It is the multi-purpose compost. And we just sow into seed trays. With Serinthy, they've got nice big seeds, so you can place them. And the good thing about them as well is they often send up 2 plants from one seed. I don't know why they're so generous. I've not got to the bottom of the genetics of that, but gives them double the chance, obviously. And when you come to prick them out, you can separate them, so you get 2 plants from one seed. So even though it might not look like a lot in a pack, you get double value with those.
Completely true. They're twins like me.
Yes, quite.
Oh, not always, are they? Actually, Not
100% of the time. No.
Yeah. And so you were saying that we use those as pot toppers. So actually, we sow those in September, but we also sow them in March. And if you just explain why we do that double sowing.
Well, I mean, to be honest, with Serinthy, we sow more than twice. So a hardy annual. So we sow in March now for flowering in 2-3 months. And we sow again in March, April, in May. So we successionally sow Serinthy. So we've always got some little ones on the go. And, they're such forgiving plants. You can put them outside. They will self-seed outside. So they're useful for that. They don't self-seed massively here, do they? Because the soil's so heavy. But we do get a few self-seeders. Yeah, so we've always got them, and we use them such a lot for foliage, for cut flowers. So we just want them all the time.
Yeah, 100%. And just one other thing important to say about Serinthy, if you pick it and plonk it, so plonk into a vase, it will flop. It's a real flopper, if I can call it that. So you always want to strip the foliage, probably 2/3 of the stem, and then just plunge the stem end into boiling water for about 5 seconds and then into cold and then into the vase. And that makes Serinthy a really wonderful foliage plant as a sort of backdrop, as Josie said, in pots for tulips, but also as a backdrop to tulips in the vase. And a perfect mixture really is a tulip, an anemone and Serinthy. And you need nothing more pretty much for a vase or for a container. Okay, good. So my first one, possibly I think, that I would be so lost without would be actually a container plant, which we use a little bit as a cut flower, but more as a container plant, which is Petunia tidal wave red velour. And it's actually, we now overwinter it in its pots. So we bring them in, certainly sometimes take cuttings, but also grow it from seed to start it off again if we need more. And it's probably in my top 5 container plants for good value. I mean, just beauty, but also just flowers and flowers and flowers. And if we need to do something for Chelsea, we often use one of the petunias, but particularly Petunia tidal wave red velour, because it really does flower from May until October. And so we can have it in flower for Chelsea week. It's got a very tiny seed, so the opposite of Serinthy, but really, really well worth sowing. So that would probably be, I'm afraid I'm going to cheat because that was a new one on my list. So my other one, as my number 1, so now my number 2, would be Amaranth. Again, a tiny seed, and that's just what reminded me of it. So all the Love Lies Bleeding family, they've become very fashionable now. They're multi-purpose, really sort of 3 or 4 roles that they play in the garden. They're a wonderful foliage plant, very bold. And so some people don't like them because they really are kind of quite sort of meaty in their appearance, but they come in an increasing range of colours. Red Army is probably one of my favourite, which is crimson. But there are beautiful ones like Hot Biscuit, which is the colour of sort of caramel, which I love, with autumn colours. And then Coral Fountain is a really soft, muted, kind of calming. And then there are all the greens. And don't forget, as well as a garden plant, it's a fabulous cut flower. It's edible, so it's called Calendula, and it's used a lot as a wilted green in very hot countries, both in the Mediterranean and in the Caribbean. I've seen it in both places, often used in horta in Greece. And its seeds are very protein rich. It's related to the quinoa family, or it's within the quinoa family. And so the birds adore it too. And it holds onto its seed very late. So Amaranth, much underestimated, undergrown plant in this country, much more popular in France, used a lot in sort of bedding schemes on roundabouts in France because it's so bold. But don't let that put you off because it's a stunning, stunning thing. So over to you.
Yeah, and just one last thing on that. It looks great amongst the dahlias to break up the dahlias, doesn't it? So
yeah, it really does.
They can get a bit blocky, so we put amaranth in there.
Actually, I didn't give the sort of practical side of that. I'm so sorry. I did say it's got tiny seeds. It's dust-like. And when it germinates, almost like an nicotiana, it really is very difficult. So you have to sow it into a seed tray. There's nothing, you couldn't manhandle it into individual pots. And so sow it into a seed tray and prick it out pretty quickly. And so we'll come on to pricking out next month, so in the April session. But yeah, Amaranth, quite fiddly, but really, really well worth it. So sorry to interrupt, Josie. Back to you.
No worries. So I'll move on to Molucella. Either is right.
Good.
Bells of Ireland. It has no connection really with Ireland. I think it was because it's such a green plant. I think that was more the connection. So it sort of originates in the Middle East. So Molucella.
No. Excuse me. I'm going to interrupt.
Sorry. Go on.
No, it doesn't. It's from Greenland and Iceland, so it's very topical at the moment with Donald Trump.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I think it's. Well, I mean,
we'll all be looking it up now.
Yeah, we'll be looking. I've read and seen photos of it as a hardy annual in very cold climate places like Consolida, like the larkspurs, which is why it follows that what you're about to tell everyone.
Yeah, that's right. The how to break the how to get it germinating. So a lot of people obviously do struggle with it to get it to germinate. And a lot of people say stick the pack in the freezer, which to me, it probably does work, but it's not what we found the best way to do it here is. So we always used to sow in March, but now we found sowing in autumn works very well.
Brilliantly.
Yeah. So what I tended to do in March is take the seeds out of their vacuum pack and put them on some kitchen towel, some damp kitchen towel on a plate, and then spread them out on that, put the whole thing into a plastic bag and put it into the fridge for a week. So that they've got moisture in there with them, which is more natural than sitting in a freezer with no moisture.
Yes.
You'll see them starting to send out their little root, and then you know that they're fine to go on to compost. But as you say, last autumn, Rebecca tried sowing them then, and they came up, without any pre-treatment. So she just had them on seed compost, and they came up really well. And we've overwintered them. They've sat and they've not done much over winter, which you wouldn't expect them to. But they're ready to go now in March time. So I would say if people are struggling, try them in autumn as well. If you've got the space, keep them quite cool, and they'll just come up as they naturally would. And of course, the other thing about them, once you've got them growing, they need support. You have to support them. They're quite floppy, aren't they? And they're great for drying. They make a great cut flower. They last for ages in the vase, and you can dry them as well, and you'll have them for months and years. So fabulous plant to have.
Fantastic. So that's our number 4. So number 5, which actually sometimes we even sow earlier, so sometimes we actually sow in February, but now is fine too, March, are the antirrhinums. And, I've already said petunias are one of my favourite plants. Well, anyway, and antirrhinums, good old-fashioned snapdragons, they are just the most brilliant plants. You've got to get varieties that don't get rust. And unfortunately, quite a lot of the double, more sort of elaborate ones do seem to. We find, really annoyingly, they do. And I don't like the doubles so much anyway, because you've got enough going on with the sort of snapdragon, the double-lipped flower. But such good cut flowers, such good border plants, such good container plants. They flower from sowing in March. They'll flower from June until certainly October with a bit of deadheading or picking. I mean, I'm crazy about them. From the tall giant white that we grow here that actually self-seeds in the garden here now, even though we've got the sort of soil that it really doesn't like, down to the really dark called Liberty Crimson, but there's so many in between. There's one called Apple Blossom that smells of sort of cinnamon, and there's a whole sonnet series that we grow here in a block together of like a really rich crimson, a really rich purple, a really rich orange, a really deep pink, and they're just stunning, absolutely stunning, both as garden plants, cut flowers and container plants. And really, you want to get on with sowing those now. Rather like tomatoes, you're getting a tad late. So antirrhinums or snapdragons, really go for. They are dust-like again, so like the amaranth, they're tiny, tiny seeds. So I would recommend sowing them into a seed tray. And if you're sowing fine seed, what I find is rather than sowing very tentatively, slowly, where you will get a heavy distribution of seed in a small surface area, what I do is I take a tiny pinch out of the packet and hold it high above a seed tray, and then I sow super manically. And what that does is it gives you a fine distribution of these tiny seeds over a larger surface area. And I do exactly the same with foxgloves. And I just find that way pricking out is much easier because you've distributed the seeds quite widely. So, that would be my 5th family.
Just think of yourself as a chef adding seasonings very fancily.
Very, absolutely right, Josie. That's completely perfect description. Yeah, good.
So I'm going to go for another one that is at the very end, really, of its sowing window now, which is Cobaea. So you can start Cobaea earlier in the year. So beginning of Feb onwards, really. Cobaea it needs a very long growing season. So if you sow it much later, it'll flower, into autumn. So the sooner you can get it going and getting it to a decent sized plant, the better. Cobaea's got lovely big seeds, which you can handle individually, and sow them on their side. Don't sow them flat side. Don't lay them down on the compost because they'll gather water and rot. So slide them in, narrow side in. It doesn't matter which end is down, which end is up. Just put them in sideways, and they'll be up and growing. But you'll move them on, and you will have to create a little frame, a twiggy frame for them, because they can't go out until May. We put them out here when all danger of frost has passed. So you just need to make them a little frame and keep doing that until you can get them outside and they'll get going. So yeah, very worthwhile climber to grow.
Great. Yep, absolutely. So my next one would actually be a poppy. And these are the exception of all these varieties that we've talked about, which is that they do seem to benefit from direct sowing. And you'll see on Instagram, there's loads and loads of feeds full of people putting little pinches of poppy seed into ice cube trays and then planting out the ice cube. And I said to Josie, so have you tried that? And she said, yes. It looks good on a film, but actually it's not very good as a practice, as a technique, because you end up with huge numbers really, really crammed together. And the one thing, as I'm sure lots of you will know, that poppies do not tolerate is being moved. I mean, they just hate root disturbance. And so it is just kind of better to literally make yourself a nice, let's say, sort of 60 centimetre by 60 centimetre panel of nice fine tilth at the front of a border and get the meanest possible pinch of seed. I mean, we're crazy about lots of them here. There's the wonderful one called Amazing Grey, but there are loads, Mother of Pearl, the black single somniferum poppy, which are the opium poppy. Once they get into your garden, you'll find they do self-seed, particularly the Papaver somniferums. I mean, Josie might say almost too much because they're actually
Yes.
in our compost and we end up having to hoe them off, but they're very easy to hoe off. But if you want to get them going, I really recommend fine tilth, direct sow in a small panel, minimal amount of seed, and literally just do nothing. And you'll see they will germinate and grow on. And I would recommend a little bit of staking if you want them to stand proud in a border. And they'll only flower for, 4, 6, possibly 8 weeks. But then they have lovely seed heads of the somniferums. And then remember not to take them out until they've seeded a bit. I mean, that's what I would say. But they are definitely better. And we are not believers in the ice cube technique. But if any of you disagree with us and you've had the most wonderful experience with that, do get in touch. But we just find you do then need to thin. And that is the one thing you want not to do with poppies.
I suppose if people have got the time to put one seed in each section of an ice cube tray, it would work.
Yes.
But we don't have that sort of time.
And the point of the ice cube is, of course, again, just like with the mollicella, you're making it germinate. So you're breaking the dormancy of that seed. And as a hardy annual, having a sort of period of cold will really help germination more quickly. And that's why sometimes the sort of more unusual poppies like Pandora and Amazing Grey can be tricky to germinate because they do need to have their dormancy broken. So that's why that whole practice has become quite widespread, but we don't find it the most successful for us.
No. And just a last thing to add about the poppies, leave the seed heads on because the blue tits absolutely love them. And if you see the seed head being eaten and wonder what's happening, that'll be the birds pecking away at them. It's a fight between us and the blue tits to get some seed, and we let them win, obviously.
Yeah. Very good.
So next I'm going on to dahlias. So we grow a lot of dahlias from seed here because of our breeding program. But there are dahlia seeds available online, and you'll just get a wonderful mix of colours. Bishop's Children is the most well known. And the cactus collection, I think we have as well, which is another lovely mix. And so, yeah, just sow them in a seed tray. They're very easy. They come up really quickly, and you'll have to move them on maybe a couple of times before May. Yeah, that's my absolute favourite thing to sow, because we don't know what flowers we're going to get, but they're such giving, wonderful plants. So it's really exciting to see what all the seed we collected last autumn will grow into, because it'll be a whole new selection of dahlias. So that's the best part.
Okay, so number 9 is the verbena family, and I have selected 2 in particular, one tall and one small. And so for tall, I'm just going to skip over it because you all know it, but it is an absolute must-have plant, which is Verbena bonariensis. Incredibly popular, rightly so, very long flowering. But the main reason we're obsessed with it here at Perch Hill, and we allow it to really run riot, is still in March, there are seed heads of Verbena bonariensis that the blue tits are feasting on and the goldfinches are feasting on. And I find when I'm walking through the garden, when it's quiet here at the weekend, if I turn the corner onto the bank, the south-facing and east-facing bank here, where there's still a good stand of Verbena bonariensis, looking pretty ropey, I mean, looking really dead, there is a flurry of goldfinches and blue tits, even now, so late in the year. And that is just amazing to me, that they've got so much seed that even now there's still forage there for the birds. So I have a whole new respect for Verbena bonariensis in recent years when I've got bird obsessed. And then the other one that I would really passionately recommend, which is the shorter one, is Verbena rigida. And it's a brilliant path edger. So if you want a real bargain plant to create a beautiful sort of parterre edge, Verbena rigida is your man or woman. And it's fantastic for containers, of course, because it's compact. And again, it flowers from sort of May, June until October, November time at least. It's a perfect accompaniment to the dahlia that Josie mentioned, Bishop's Children. And we have it in a pack together, actually, called something like the Paint Box Collection, because they are first-year flowering perennials, so really good value, and they are perennials. So they flower very quickly, but they are also perennial. So Dahlia Bishop's Children and Verbena rigida are real bargains in terms of seed-growing stuff. Very easy to grow, very quick to germinate, no problems. The dahlias will take a bit longer than the verbena, but I passionately recommend both bonariensis and rigida as first-year flowering perennials. And I'm sure you know both, but if you don't know one or the other, then try them.
Yes. So I'm going for an edible ornamental next, which is calendula. So we sow a lot of calendula, a lot of different varieties here. Very easy to sow because they've got such lovely big seeds. So place them just individually in a seed tray. And we grow, neon's the one with the most petals. I think the kitchen appreciate that the most, really, don't they? Because you less heads for more petals. A lovely bright orange, really. And my favourite is sunset buff. Sunset buff is fabulous and a lovely colour, and it looks great to be the kitchen. Use it a lot for scattering on salads and things. Definitely worth growing calendula. So many uses.
Definitely. My favourite, I have to say, is still Indian Prince. And I love it for sort of nostalgic reasons, because it was one of the plants that I grew first here 32 years ago in my cut flower patch. And I've grown it every year since. And it's just beautiful because it's orange with a crimson petal reverse. So it's got a sort of sophistication to it rather than the sort of common or garden calendulas or marigolds. And the other thing is they're all totally, totally fantastic for pollinators. And you can use them for a healing remedy. And they make the most brilliant skin salve. And if you can sort of get a carrying cream, like like an almond oil or something like that, and use it, I mean, they're brilliant for insect bites. Calendula cream, I'm sure you'll come across in a good herb store and sort of, a really like Holland and Barrett type shop. But if you can make your own, it's even better. And Indian Prince is a real classic, classy favourite of mine. and very easy to sow because the seeds, as a beginner, are huge. I mean, they kind of remind me of a cat's claw, funnily enough. I mean, they're sort of bent over slightly and they're ribbed. They've got sort of ridges down them, which I don't think cat's claws do, but they always slightly reminded me of those. And so they're very, very, very easy and they're very quick to germinate. So if you want something to start with, but they give you something sophisticated and lovely.
Yeah, and another one that we succession sow. So we'll keep sowing that throughout the year, really.
Yeah. So it's now over to me, isn't it? So my number 11 on our list is another plant that, to be honest, we don't really need to sow here anymore because it's quite liberally self-seeded itself, which is Panicum sparkling fountain. It's actually got so many different names, this plant. You'll see it in some catalogues referred to as sprinkles. It's sometimes referred to as frosted explosion, sparkling fountain. Anyway, it's the one that looks like a fibre optic wand that you might a kid might have at a firework party, or we might all have at a concert or whatever, at a gig. But anyway, it's the most elegant grass you can possibly imagine. Josie and I have gone on about it quite a lot over the years. Oh, and do you know what? We have been doing this podcast for 5 years now. Can you believe that? But anyway, Panicum Sparkling Fountain, much, much recommended. And we sow that kind of mid-March, and then it will self-seed itself. And we go on picking that right the way through until late autumn. And the great thing about it is that it's very unique in my experience in that it actually forms axillary buds. And most grains do not do that. They just put up one head. They're monocarpic, but this isn't. It will create many heads. And so it is literally the only cut and come again grass that I can think of.
Yes, fabulous and great in pots. It's such a good filler to fill out your containers. And same in the vase, obviously. So I'm going to finish with Phlox Drummondii, one of our real favourites here. It's such a good little plant. Again, quite small seeds. One of the things we do here for sowing, knowing where you've sown. So you fill your tray with compost and then you put another tray on top of it. So it's sitting on top and it makes indentations in the compost underneath. So it gives you the lines of the tray above. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Okay, good.
That's a really good tip.
So you can then take the top tray off and then sew in the lines that's been made. It just saves thinking about trying to remember where you've been.
Yeah.
And we use that for Phlox Drummondii particularly because you can't really see where the seeds are on the compost. And exclude the light.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, some seeds require light, some need light excluded, but it'll always say on the packet. So we're not going to go through each one and say, do this, do that, because the instructions should be on the pack. But for this phlox, it does need light excluded. So again, what we do, we'd sow it, very fine covering of compost, and then upturn a seed tray on top. So it'll be dark. And it does give it that bit of head space. You have to look every couple of days. And as soon as they start to germinate, then the lid comes off. And the ones that haven't germinated will germinate still. But they need that initially. Yeah, and creme brulee is the most well-known one.
Yeah.
Probably my favourite is cherry caramel because it's got that such mix of colours. Blushing bright's beautiful, scented. But they do need a bit of a prop. So either have them flowing over the side of a pot or grow them. We grow them with garlic chives. The garlic chives will help them keep upright. So fabulous little plants.
Good. Thank you so much, Josie.
Okay, pleasure.
So those are our March highlights, really. And as I say, in a month's time, we're going to come back together again and we're going to talk about the polytunnel in April. So see you then.
Bye.
Thanks very much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and it was lovely being joined by Josie Lewis, our head gardener. Next week, I'm back on my own again, and I'm going to be talking about the colour gardens. So it's the mini-series, and it's episode 5, and in that, I'm going to cover the velvet palette. So where you might want to put it, the atmosphere it creates, and the families or the plant genuses that really give you this wonderful velvet palette. The plant families, but also the species I particularly recommend for the different colours that make up the velvet palette. So I hope to see you then if that's your favourite range of colours, which, as I've already admitted, it is mine. So see you then.
You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.